How is the US government reacting to France's reaction to pull out ambassadors, not only in the United States, but in Australia as well?
Well, they're reacting by sort of brushing it off. And it's interesting. We've heard the French foreign minister and President Macron talk about how the AUKUS deal caught them totally off guard. They were notified just before President Biden and Prime Minister Morrison and Prime Minister Johnson made that announcement virtually. Yet the U.S. authorities, specifically White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, they've claimed that France had ample notice that this deal was going to happen. They claim that the Australian government requested the deal of the UK and of the US, and that they're happy to supply our allies in the region. Of course, Australia is one of our great partners in the Quad alliance, including Japan and South Korea, in terms of trying to negotiate a safe and secure Indo-Pacific region. They're happy to supply them with technology. So we'll see how France handles this next week at the UN General Assembly here in the United States. But at the moment, the US is pretending like this is not their problem. France should have known that this was coming, and we're happy again to supply our allies with whatever technology they might need.
It's an interesting one because it's a good headline grabber. Anything like this is, if you decide, okay, now you're coming home, it gets people writing stories and us talking about it. But when you look at the real, the real essence of the story, is it just posturing?
I think it is. And I believe earlier in your program, you talked about President Macron is heading into an election cycle himself. This is a weighty deal that France will be losing out on. I think it was, to the sum of several £billions, the submarine technology that they would be supplying to Australia. So I think that this is President Macron trying to put on a strong face heading into an election. I'm not really sure what sort of leverage they might have over the United States. We've already seen President Biden and, like I mentioned, Jen Psaki wave off that criticism. There might be some type of boilerplate moment at the UN next week, but at the moment, it does appear to be France trying to prop themselves up, at least to his electors, President Macron, that is.
Really disturbing news yesterday, wasn't it, when we heard from the US military about that drone strike killing 10 civilians?
Yeah, this was terrible. CENTCOM Commander Frank McKenzie made the announcement during a Pentagon press briefing, and we had heard Secretary of State Antony Blinken receive heavy questioning from both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the House this past week about that retaliatory strike. Were they aware that the target was not an ISIS-K operative, like the president claimed after the strike took place? And he flat out said, I don't know for sure at this point in time. Obviously, the U.S.'s over-the-horizon drone program has a sort of sordid history of causing civilian casualties, and this is just another instance. It's another blemish on the Biden administration's sort of lackluster, we'll say, handling of the devolving situation in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, it's one that we've heard all too often over the past decade here in the States.
Turning domestically to the US, and is it still very much a two-paced existence in the US for those areas that are predominantly vaccinated and those that aren't with COVID?
I'm not sure if two-paced is necessarily the right word. The country is ticking up in terms of overall vaccinations. I believe we're encroaching on around 78% as of the last data set that I've seen. But the president's plan to launch this new third wave of booster shots for anyone over the age of 16 did hit a bit of a roadblock this past week. The Food and Drug Administration voted down on Friday his plan to authorize those boosters for the general population. They did vote, however, to let the boosters go forward in people over the age of 65 and other people with autoimmune disease who might be immunocompromised or whatnot. But it is strange. This is sort of taking another one on the chin, I guess is the best way to put it, President Biden's vaccine strategy. They are rolling out all of the stops to try and get people vaccinated, especially as the Delta variant and the Lambda variant are sweeping across the United States and the international community. Now, this is sort of a win for the World Health Organization and some of those other countries across the globe who've said, please don't initiate the third booster shot strategy until we've gotten our first shots. So we'll see if the U.S. does start shipping more vaccines overseas in light of the news from the FDA this past week.
Yeah, we'll watch that space with interest. Just finally and anecdotally, Christian, just for people here in Australia, our two biggest cities have been locked up for quite some time. We are seeing a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with vaccination numbers going up. Where you are in Washington, D.C., what is it like? Just say you and a group of friends want to go out to dinner. Give us a little bit of insight into what life is like at the moment where you are.
Well, it's similar to what you've seen sort of towards the end of the past, the past third wave, I guess, before we sort of went down into these lockdowns again. Everyone is supposed to be wearing masks when you're inside. When you're outside, everyone takes them off. I think, unfortunately, and hopefully, again, the rising vaccination rates don't let this happen, but everyone is sort of tired of wearing masks at this point in time. Hopefully, this doesn't come back around to negatively impact us come the winter. We saw what happened last year once winter and the colder temperatures came around. But I think, Tim, like you pointed out, a light at the end of the tunnel. People are starting to take their foot off the gas. A little sports auto metaphor there for the folks back at home. But it's wearing on everyone's nerves, and I think everyone is just ready to return to a sense of normalcy at this point in time.
Good timing for the sports metaphor because we're in finals time in our football here. Christian, it's always good to have a chat.
Be well, Tim.